So what I wanted to do was just take a minute and walk through the structure of what Suzala and Boris were just talking about with respect to protection groups and replication setup and managing the environment. All right. As soon as this screen loads into vCenter, we should be on our way. So we saw earlier the dashboard and the hosts and kind of the top level view. I'm going to go now into the protection menu as soon as it comes up here, and we're going to look at setting up these protection groups. All right, that's a little bit bigger. All right, so we're on a particular DVX here, DVX47. It has some hosts attached to it. And on this particular screen, we're going to look at the world through 3 different panels. And I'm just going to scroll to the bottom first, where the replica sites are pointed out. And this is the topology. Think of this as the graph. So we've got source sites and destination sites. And I can go to basically any source DVX and set up a pairing with a destination as simply as just clicking Add, providing the name or IP of that destination site, the administrative login so that the DVX data nodes can negotiate and figure out what they're doing, all right, and set up the topology, and then a site label so that I can reference it in my view here if there happens to be something that I want. So I have DVX47 replicating out to 24 and 26, and I have 32 actually coming in. So we can set up one-to-many, bidirectional, many-to-one, depending on what you want. Think of this as sort of the graph information from each source in my, my overall sort of data cloud network. At the top here, I have a live group panel, and then below that, I have a replica groups panel. The live group is what's happening at this site, and the replica group is basically what's coming into this site from somewhere else. And we can see here on my replica group, for example, I've got these protection groups coming in from DVX 24, 26, and 32. So I've got lots of people sending stuff into this particular site. Basically, they're protecting data or sharing data with DVX 47. 47 is also doing some things purely locally with no replicating replicating out to multiple sites or off to another one. And what I'm going to do is just kind of quickly go through how easy it is to set this up. So let's go ahead and create one here, and I'll call it TFD-14. Good name. Now, we talked about the dynamic naming patterns a little bit, and anything that's on the data store is eligible for a membership in this protection group. All right, we're not going inside the guests. We're basically looking at the data store here, and I can do something like, say, worker, and I happen to know that I have a bunch of these sitting out there doing things in my environment. Here's 14 virtual machines that I can basically pick up by wildcard. And anything that I name worker now will get picked up by this policy. Every time this policy runs, it'll bind out to the namespace and say, pick up those virtual machines. So I can establish conventions for the protection groups. And this isn't just for backup or restore, but it might be for data sharing as well. I can also pick individual virtual machines. So I could go into my environment, and if I wanted to just look at those applications that I was looking at earlier in one of the demos, I could pick these up and literally just shoot them to the right. I'll pick up the odd ones here, add those to the policy. I can go here to my, my file system. Now, from an administrator's perspective, sometimes I use the data store to hold stuff. All right. I put ESX patch files out there, ISO files, OVA, zip files, things that I use to manage the environment. I kind of like to protect those. I like to push those out to my DVX sites. So I'm going to throw those into this protection group as well. And then even to the point of granularity, I could, for example, pick up a virtual machine here and drill in and just pick up an individual disk. All right, so we're data store aware to the file, the vDisk, the VM, and now the collection level. And so this group that I just built here, TFD14, essentially says that's the membership. So when I take action, I want all of those things to basically be treated with the same point in time. All right. So what does that mean? Well, I can schedule a snapshot down to the half-hour granularity. I'm going to pick something like daily here because it essentially lets me pick the hours of the day. So if I wanted something like a 4-hour SLA, I could just simply scroll through here and pick up the hour that I want that to happen, how long I want to keep it on site, and let's say we want to keep this for 2 days. All right. So this is going to run locally on the live site, on the local DVX47 that we're working with. I may want to replicate this as well. If it's something I'm doing locally, that's fine, but I could choose to replicate it to one or more other sites that are in my topology already. All right. And so I could say replicate this to those other 2 sites and keep it there for a little bit longer or a little bit less. All right. So I have a lot of flexibility here in setting up the policy per schedule. I could even add in another schedule if I wanted something to run nightly or weekly and go to a different location. All of this is essentially going to happen in the background. All right. And what that does is it creates an instance here of a policy that I can act on. All right. Now, the protection group schedule is set up to run. I've picked the hours, but I can also manually act on my environment. So as an administrator, I could, for example, say, take a snapshot of all of that, and let's just keep that for a couple of hours. So by the time I get on the plane tonight, it's already cleaned itself up. All right, but I now have a snapshot at this instant of that entire group that I can act on. Now, what can I do? So I can use that for restore. I can use that as a protection point to roll back. So let's say I wanted to do some administration and it oopsed it. I could literally roll back all of that whole set, those files, those virtual machines, those vDisk. I could push those all back. I could also choose to replicate those to another DVX that's in my topology that's not maybe in my schedule, or I could choose to clone it. Those 3 things are available with anything that we're taking snapshots of. So restore, clone, or replicate at the entire protection group, the individual virtual machine, or the vDisk level. And I kind of want to show you this. So I'm going to go ahead into this TFD instance, and here's my snapshot I just took. All right. And if I select this now, I can see that there's 16 virtual machines and 3 files in there. And I can see, you can see me scrolling here because I took up all my real estate to make it large. You can see all the virtual machines in there and all the files that are members of that. But I could, for example, clone the entire protection group. All right. And I'm going to clone that off to a TFD demo folder. And I'm going to give it that prefix that I was interested in earlier. I'm going to go ahead and prefix it with work. All right. This is kind of recursive to some degree because it's going to produce virtual machines that'll get picked up by the protection group I'm actually cloning them out of, but that might be by intent. All right. So what this is doing is essentially, and you can see it running over here, very quickly making new instances of that entire protection group on the local data store. All right. And as soon as that's done, it refreshes the window. I'm going to go back up to my protection level here and take a look at this definition that I have here. And those additional VMs should show up in that wildcard match that I had. All right. If not, I'll refresh the screen. So we go back in here and we preview the VMs now. All right. So there's my 30 VMs. Even my own naming conventions were a little off here. All right. So all of those workers now are included in this automatically through the dynamic binding of the policy. So I can use that to establish workflows, practices in my organization. I could go down here to the replica groups that are coming into this site. So I could take this and I still have the same clone, restore, replicate capability on anything that's come to this site, whether it's created locally with a live group or has been replicated in from another site. All right. And that's really about the end of it literally is that simple, setting up these policies to run. Okay? Unique size. Oh, sure. Yeah, there's lots of stuff in here. So let me go back up here for a minute and look at the live groups. You notice some bookkeeping here. All right. I've got not only the status of the policy, but I also have total size and unique size. So remember, we're doing compression and deduplication, and as we take each of these point-in-time snapshots, there's going to be some sort of delta set in there. The snapshot has a total logical size, but it also has a size of unique data. And if I drill into this, I'll see that as well on the individual parts down here if I wanted to see where it's contributing from. So I have knowledge of how much space is being consumed. One of the things we saw in the earlier demo when I was scrolling through the charts, there was actually a capacity chart that showed the data store and snap store usage. So I can watch trending graphs. So I may be protecting more data than I'm keeping or keeping more data than I'm protecting. You can see that in the charts. All right. So the unique size is essentially calculated along each data set and each snapshot collection that we're building. So that kind of wraps up literally replication, snapshots, setting this up from site to site and managing the content at multiple levels of granularity and sort of flexibility. Okay.